Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how did you know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Human Design Advantage podcast. My name is Jen, and decoding the matrix for us is Danny Guru.
Yep, and Tressa Rivera. Tressa, how are you? Jen, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Today we're doing sort of interviews and discussions with two reflectors, Kristen and Lauren, and we're going to start to crack open this mystery that is. How does, when we first look at a chart, right, Tressa, right, Jen, you see a reflector, it's like, what do I say? And that's being gotten to. So I think it's going to be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I'm really excited about diving into this because I've been doing the whole experiment with the 28 days, and that is regarding, that's the cycle they have to wait for. So.
Yeah.
Before we dive into today's episode, guys, it is August 14th, 2020. Make sure that you subscribe, and follow the show. And yeah, do you want to pop them on? How do you want to run this, Dan? I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, let's pop them on and say hi and get this dialogue going. Oh, Savannah was nice enough to send us her thoughts on some questions to ask. And hopefully we've all been thinking of things we care to know. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Good Lord. Lauren, how are you? You're muted.
Yeah, I haven't seen Lauren pop on just yet.
Oh, good enough. Yep, she probably has her link. I'll text her. There. No. You.
Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll get her in a minute. I forgot which. No worries. So, Lauren, we had this amazing journey yesterday. And Kristen, sorry, we had this amazing journey yesterday, and we went through a lot. And I forget, did I get you your recording? I forget if I sent it yet.
Not quite yet.
Okay, I'll get it to you after the show. My apologies. But we're all curious because we've been looking into reflectors for a while now. When we first started, we were all getting all the other types because that's the majority. And no one had a lot of experience talking to people who have this amazing position in our world to be able to actually themselves be a conduit for our knowing of how we're doing in a sense. And when I asked you about your openness, I remember you had a bit to say about that, about your openness. So I guess a couple things. Speak to what it's like to have all of this openness in your chart, if you can.
Yes. And my journey with even just being introduced to human design has only been about a month and a half. So I'm still gathering a lot of information and understanding and confirming. I know we talked a lot about confirming. So openness is something that I've just experienced my whole life. I've not really known anything else. And when I observe other interactions and connectedness, I thought that there might be something kind of off with me because it was difficult for me to connect at such what I observed, a deep level, and just continue flowing on to the next thing and not have something in my past connecting me or being just having a pull to or not being able to let go So that's a little bit about openness as I'm starting to understand the language of how it's affecting me, or what I've noticed as I look back on my own life is, it's just really allowing things to come in, and I don't feel like these all, I look at it like, connections. It's just there. I observe it and I keep moving. It's very interesting.
I can imagine. And on the surface, so the deepness that you're referring to is you could feel it deeply, this difficulty in connecting, but it only really showed, well, I'm asking as a question, is it true that it's mostly showed up on the surface? Like you're in a crowd with a couple of people, and the next thing, with a couple of people, and someone comes up and introduces themselves, and it's not you first that they go to embrace, in a sense, because this aura is resistant, it's sampling them, they're new. And that probably, I can imagine, has been going on your whole life.
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember noticing that. So I read for 4 reflectors right in a row, and I really got a much better handle on, what all of this is about. So I started to recognize that in first introductions, like, you and your partner, and you meet somebody, and the warmth sort of goes to your partner first. That seemed to be a common theme. Is that true for you too?
Yes, as you're speaking that, a lot of different experiences in the past have come up of, oh, okay, yes.
Right. And so, it must be an amazing awakening for you to recognize that there's nothing wrong with me. It's not my fault. I didn't, I'm not, like, we all have this thing about wondering if we're less lovable than we should be, or than the other is. And that is a big conditioning agent in our world. So I can imagine that may have run through you at times, wondering that.
Yes, there's been, in fact, a few different individuals who have asked my husband, like, does your wife not like me? Because I'll walk past and they'll just feel this, maybe a resistance energy. And I'm smiling and I try to be extra friendly to show that. But what they're feeling is, my aura. And I know you had looked into some of my other gates, and you noticed I had one of the gates of magnetism. So it was even a double.
So she's got a gate 15 in her body graph, gives her a double wide aura. That's the love of humanity.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's extremes. And it's like, so I'm a manifestor, and manifestors and reflectors, we have the most similar aura types, where everybody else, they don't really have protection, but we do, right? I do and you do. And as a child, my whole life, there was always this thought of, what's wrong with me? Why don't they like me, right? Like, what's wrong with me, right? Because, and as a reflector, every reflector I've ever met is, I'm just going to say it's psychic. They're all deeply sensitive, and they can deeply feel, right? And so, and as a manifestor, it's like, I could feel myself pushing people away. And I look at the childhood of a reflector, and although you are protected, like you guys, your aura is of Teflon, but it still can be that feeling of an unknown child, as it's like, what's wrong with me? Why don't they like me? Right? I'm smiling at them. I want to be friends with them, but what is wrong with me that they want to go up to everybody else? And so that's something personally that I'm really getting in touch with, where it's like, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just my aura.
Yes. And that's so beneficial to understand.
Just that simple thing. Mm-hmm. Imagine just knowing the simplest of things. In interaction in the future, now, as you walk by, you could actually choose to take an extra moment, plant yourself, and make eye contact, like in a purposeful way, type thing, or whatever, as you're breezing by or doing whatever, and still have your perfect sort of protection.
Yeah. If it feels good, as long as it feels good to you. If it doesn't feel good, keep on moving.
Whatever feels good, of course, obviously.
Well, and I only say that, Danny, because as a child, when you get the sense that people don't like you for some reason, I think a knee-jerk reaction is to want them to like you. And I don't know how it is for a reflector, but for a manifestor, as adults, we all have this like people-pleasing complex because we're naturally pushing them away with our aura. And so even if, you know, maybe they aren't the best people for us, there is a part of me and my conditioning that is like, but why don't you like me? I want to make you like me. Right. And so it's just important to like mention that, like, especially as a reflector, if they don't feel good for you, then it doesn't matter if they like you or not. They're not your people.
Yeah.
I think that's important that you say that, because as a manifestor, I have that too. And I think, you know, listening more about the 5-1 profile, I think they have that as well too. So it is important that you go with if it's feeling, because people pleasing is a big program that's ingrained in a lot of people.
Was that true for you too? You know, growing up, or just in your life generally, this whole wondering why that is, and then finding yourself people pleasing, or is that not so much a thing with you, Kristen?
Yes, very much a thing. And, you know, with an undefined sacral, if the people pleasing is, that's a lot of energy coming from you that's being taken from you. And so I've often wondered, like, man, why am I so tired? I haven't really done a whole lot, but there is just like you mentioned, this program that can be running that's just sucking all of this energy because you're trying to have people like you.
My goodness. Yeah. What, you know, we always think of using up our energy as, you know, brute strength, movement, lifting things, you know, cleaning the whole house or whatever. But boy, we can use up a lot of energy just being awake and upright in situations. Thinking can use up so much energy. Feelings, right? That's sort of what you're saying.
The thinking, because it occupies a lot of headspace, and you could be utilizing that for something else. When ultimately, you know, Tress is right. It has nothing to do with, you know, that's the other person. Just worry about you.
Right. And there's just so much conditioning in so many areas. And especially as a woman, right? I'm kind of at this point in my journey where it's like we spend extra energy to, you know, make ourselves be what society wants us to be as women, on top of being a reflector and that's a lot of energy. It's a lot of just what you said is, you know, and I also just want to point out that even on the days where you aren't trying to do that, you're still going to be in and out of tiredness. You're still going to always have those days where, man, it's a horizontal day. You are laying in bed today. That's what you're doing, and that's perfect for you.
What was it like to learn that it's actually beneficial to set yourself on a sleeping regimen and you know, to allow yourself to physically rest, even if it's only for 20 minutes and 10 minutes?
Yes. I started noticing that, you know, after I had kids and all of the energy it took, I talked to you a little bit about my oldest daughter's a projector. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, what the heck is going on here, you know, and figuring out how to manage and work with her energy gates and are the channels that we have connected together. But for myself, I only require like a 10 or a 15 minute little tiny lay down power nap. And if I can get that, man, I am just back and ready to go. So setting yourselves up and understanding and knowing, you know, what really fills your bucket is so helpful. I am still kind of a night owl. I know I can do a lot better with going to bed earlier, and for myself, as knowing that as a reflector, but just understanding that little power nap is huge for what I require to accomplish throughout the day. And
I think reflectors have all the permission in the world to be night owls. That's when the moon is out. We can see it. So, but I think it really ends up being finding your regimen and allowing yourself to stick to it and not just burn through it. So have you found it easier to start to give yourself permission to just have that power nap?
Yes.
Yeah, because I know even me, when I want a power nap, at least before, it would always be like, if I do this, I'm not doing something else. And I would feel myself with this feeling like I'm supposed to do something else. And that's not true.
Yeah.
You know? So I had another question. I always have this question. It's a lot to have your human design chart read, to go from a month or two ago with none of this to suddenly all of it. Was it an expansive experience at first? What's it like being read and having a stranger tell you about yourself, and and being in that moment for, we were on the phone for an hour and a half, or over an hour.
Yes. You saw my sun is in the gate of 24, which is knowing. So that's just a big part of who I am, is knowing. And I get a lot of energy from just gathering information and putting it all together. So when you were helping me to understand that in the brilliant way that you were, there was just so much of the surprise elements, because with the knowing for myself, it feels like I've dabbled in a lot of different things. And so when somebody comes at me with something that I don't know, it's very exciting. And I have that element of surprise. So it offers this just beautiful gift for myself. And yes, I appreciate a lot of the things that you talked about and mentioned. They did give that element for myself.
Oh, that's just so wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And generally, we like to ask if there was so the gate 24 was one. Were there other like aha moments, just moments of other surprise inside the reading itself, if you can recall one?
Yes. We talked a little bit about just the centers, and we're a 9-centered being. And then when you sent me all of the different charts, I thought maybe that it was going to be the Zoom link with the email, but you had gathered all of these amazing charts. And so, I was lit up just kind of looking and seeing what all of those looked like. But the spleen was particularly drawing for me as we were discussing, because it wasn't my most gates activated, but in the spleen, I believe I have 4 gates activated. And we talked a little bit about connecting and understanding that, that's where the fear has come in my past. And up until now, I've had to really do a lot of self-discovery about that and transform it into my greatest strengths. However, I'm understanding there's nothing wrong with me. It's just in my design, and it's something for me to transform. It's something maybe I picked to get really good at here.
Right. Sort of like letting it pass through during meditation rather than holding on to it all day long, for instance. Yeah.
Yes.
Jennifer, do we have Kristen's chart?
Yes, we do.
If that's okay with you, Kristen.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's all of that on the spleen. And I think I would have pointed out gate 44, how it fears the past some. It has this sort of wonder about what might have gone wrong from the past, and it brings it forward into a fear into the future. And this open spleen is always sort of wanting to feel safe. So it would be normal that you run into somebody that has a defined spleen. That would be an incredibly normal thing. I also remember going through this G center in the center, talking about how it's your locator. Do you remember any of that, Kristen? We were talking about how it always lets you know if you're in the right place. It becomes a feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that coupled with your open sacral center, not knowing when enough is enough, or letting yourself to burn out over being in the wrong place at times. And so have you started to recognize then that place, not only does place matter, but that you can tell in a nanosecond, mostly, that you aren't in the right place?
Yes. And it's giving myself the permission that it's okay. I don't have to stay for anybody else. Like this is my own health. And it's beneficial when I stay healthy so that I reflect back health.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Tressa, does anything stand out to you in this body graph, or?
Oh yeah. Like, wow, all of your variables are facing to the right. Like, not only are you completely open, but you're all right facing. And girl, you're a 3-6 profile. Like that was hard growing up. It can be really, that 6 line can be so turbulent, right? It's this I never know until I do it. You had to do everything. I bet you were a really tactile learner. I bet you were the kid that had to pick it up and physically play with it or do it or drive there in order to know where you're going. Like, it's that sensation of and that 6th line before you reach the age of 30 can be so tumultuous. It can be really hard as you ramp up into the 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. And once we reach about 30 and everything starts to kind of settle down, I mean, looking back, it's almost like you were a different person. I mean, how was your experience? How old are you, first of all?
I'm 39.
Yeah. Okay.
And so in the second half,
yeah,
the second try thing.
Was that your experience as well? Once you reached the age of 30, do you feel like you kind of shifted into almost a different person in some ways?
Yes. And just being a reflector, and having those open centers, everything just falls into your lap in the right timing. It's just drawn to you. Age 30 was when I had my final child, my number 4. And after that is right when I had all these opportunities to go into self-development and to start having tools. And so I loved that phase of like, okay, I can finally breathe. And thank you, because I didn't know how I was going to tread this water much longer. Yeah. And so it's just beautiful to see how it unfolds.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that aspect, right? Because you have a line 3 in your personality. And so there's always going to kind of be that aspect of like, hey, it's not a mistake, it's a learning experience, right? And that's how you learn, and that's how you grow, and you get really good at things, because you have to sometimes have failures in order to grow. But getting up onto the roof with some more of that stability, like, okay, I'm okay now, right?
Yes, I can do this.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
We got message from Lauren that something about our connection just isn't working. And
Yes.
Maybe she might be able to refresh and try again. So good enough. With this 3-6 profile, growing up, that would have been a 3-3 profile. The first 28 and a half years are spent with that 6 line acting out a 3rd line profile. Now that's the trial and errorist. Do you remember it's about a sustained energy to try this and that and become adaptive and mutative about things along the way. Parents can see that as a kid who's accident prone or makes mistakes and needs lots of correction. Did any of that show up in your childhood? Maybe not, but you tell us.
That part didn't. Both of my parents were generators, and I choose to know how that helped me, because I felt very there was a lot of grace, I should say, in that. I know it could have gone a completely different way based on those lines, but I had a really great experience in childhood. They were very understanding, and I got to experience and use my hands a lot, figure out what worked, what didn't work, and the excitement and the surprise when it did work, and just, yeah.
That's amazing. So we call that a serendipity. Our parents condition us, and then the school and society, and before you know it, the whole world is conditioning us into the old, 7-centered strategic way that is not very kind in a lot of ways. But it's a serendipity when somebody's parents accidentally recognize and basically raise them according to an aspect of their design. It's so I call that a serendipity. We've all had various versions of it. Some of us not so much, but some people have a great deal of serendipity in that area.
Yes, my parents were very natural. My dad's a master herbalist. My mom was a masseuse and reflexologist. So they were very open as well. So to my openness, that really worked for me. And my mom homeschooled me some of my years when I chose to be homeschooled. And so when I wanted to go to school, I went to school. And when I wanted to be homeschooled, my mom was there to homeschool me. So I had, I think, very open parents, open generator parents.
That's absolutely amazing. You know what I'm hearing, and you guys might recognize this too. I'm hearing the lack of pessimism. Pessimism is this thing. So you know about pessimism with this 3-6 profile. It's sort of a guide. It's like, well, I'm not so sure about that, but it sounds like your pessimism lasts for a moment as you use it cognitively, rather than pessimism settling in on our body as a way of life. Third lines very often are subject to, especially the harder it is on them, the more pessimistic they actually sound.
Oh,
yeah. I'm not hearing any of that.
No, my parents were very awake. I shared with you, my dad had taught me Earl Nightingale's work, which was a lot about visualization. So we would do memory work, visualization, and this was all taught at a young age. So if I desired something, they would teach me to see it in my mind and feel what it feels like to have it. And, you know, so it was, I understand it's a very different way of growing up. And I see us moving towards that. That's
yes.
Reflect and amplify. However, during my parents' era, that was not very common.
Yeah, this
beautiful.
Sounds like a tool we need in our toolkit, right, Jen?
Absolutely. It is a tool I have in my toolkit. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's beautiful that you were, your parents, you know, had that container for you, because I completely agree. I think it is necessary, and, you know, it is a tool that you have in your toolbox. I mean, people will be a lot more happier if parents, one, did this for children, because it goes back to imagining, you know, it's your imagination. I think a lot of kids nowadays are disconnected from that. They're getting their information from outside sources. So yeah, I think that's beautiful. You were allowed to grow up that way. Like Dan said, most people are not fortunate to do that or have parents to go through that, but it's definitely needed in the collective.
Yeah. And more than that, reflectors do not have a consistent inner authority. And an inner authority, most, 99% of people have a place inside of their body where they can have consistent inner guidance from their body. Now, as a reflector, that isn't consistent. It'll change. And it's so important for reflectors to have outer authorities. And for you to be raised with such amazing, beautiful, consistent outer authorities as parents is so amazing and beautiful. And by the way, your unconscious mind speaks in imagination, in images, in metaphors. I'm a hypnotherapist. And so whenever I hear parents teaching their children how to visualize, that truly is self-hypnosis. It's you having a deep relationship with your own unconscious mind, which is what Jen was mentioning, how people are disconnected from their imagination. They're disconnected from their own unconscious minds, purely running off of the facade of, Danny, what they think they are. Right. And so, and not only that, but it has taught you at a young age that is what love is. And as a grown-up, I'm so interested and curious to know if you have a consistent outer authority in a partner or in friends. Do you still have that in your life aside from your parents?
Yes, and this is part of one of my miracle stories. As my dad taught me the visualization tool, I went to a nearby town, 14, 15, aged, and just really connected with one of the boys there. And I just innately felt, whether it was the connections that I felt from him, but I went home, I'm like, I'm going to use this tool to my advantage. And so I started imaging every single night after I would look at the moon and the star that was in my, it was so amazing as I look back at my childhood. There was a certain routine that I had, and I'd have to look out my window, find the certain star, and just feel the moon on me. And then I'd lay down and I'd start to visualize. And so I imagined this boy calling me for a date, and every single night, and where we would go, what we would experience. And in my mind, it became so normal that I'm like, oh, we're going to get married now. So I have it in my journal. I'm going to marry, da, 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 and we're going to have this many kids. Fast forward, I marry him. We never dated, and it just so happened, timing, he was, however, I choose to know how that all works. But he is a Manny Jen, and I adore him. So he is my outer authority, and I so appreciate what he is. Yes.
Oh, that was a great, I have chills. That was a great story.
That really, really, really is. And a couple of the questions that actually had come in, I don't know if there's any other questions in, Jen, but
I have a question real quick, because you talked about the moon cycle and looking at the star, and it's how synchronistic you say that, because I was actually working on a course about that, manifesting just the way that you said right before this. So have you been operating on a moon cycle that you've noticed through your life? Because I know you have to wait for the lunar cycle. So out of doing that visualization and the manifesting, is that something that was always in alignment with you, that you've been drawn to and you've noticed?
Since coming into human design, I look back and I notice now why that just felt so completing me. So just required me to have whatever you would call that. I choose to know the language for human design of what that might look like. And yes, I would take a while when something came in for me to make a decision on that was big, I didn't feel a pressure or a rush. Like nobody could really put that pressure on me. It was just like, okay. And I'd sit with it for a few days. And if it left me, if I became disinterested in it, or if it left my mind, then it was just gone. Like it wasn't something that it was a no, or it just didn't ever circle back around. However, if the thought kept popping into my energy, my space of like, oh, it just kept getting my attention. Like it would take my attention, just like a billboard sign is how I look at it. You're driving down and you're just driving down the road, and all of a sudden you see a billboard, and it's bringing your attention to that one back. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm observing it, driving down the road again, pops up again. So that's how I would take the signals. If it kept popping up, I would revisit it and then have the choice and make the decision. I didn't recognize if it was a full lunar cycle for myself because I just didn't have that knowledge. But when I look back on things, I didn't make decisions very quickly. I sat with them.
Right, you were sitting when all that looking at the moon as a child was actually formatting you. It was helping to condition you. It wasn't so much what gate the moon was in at the moment that you were looking at it. It was your awareness to keep looking at it. It's very profound. It's very profound. One of the questions that I had gotten asked was, looking back, have you noticed anything that might have been a difficulty given your completely open aura, that open centers, and there's this aura of yours and this waiting to make a decision? Was there anything that has been difficult about any of that?
Yes. I remember describing to my mom sometimes just how I felt. In the past, if I would look back on an experience, I would see myself above floating as if I was watching myself go through the experience. And so I wondered if I had pulled out and wasn't fully completely present as a child because of all the feeling that was coming in was too much. And so it was easy for me to disconnect from my body. I choose to know what that is because I'm still, it's brand new for me to be talking about it or like
Right.
what that means. So as a child, some things were a lot. They were a lot to feel. And going into funerals, especially, it was very difficult to feel the people. And I might even start crying now because just thinking about it, the people who didn't allow themselves to grieve, I felt the grief through them.
You did. That's amazing. I wonder if they saw that, Kristen. In a funeral, they may not have noticed, but maybe someone did. It would be remarkable if someone noticed you putting that back. Not recognizing what it was, but just recognizing it.
I had a very interesting experience in a chart reading with a lady maybe a month ago, and her conscious sun was also in gate 24. And she told me a very similar experience of her having over and over coming outside of her body and having this experience of kind of looking over and down upon it.
Wow.
And the only thing that I could think about is that gate 24 is always looking up to the 61, which is the mysteries of life. And almost, right, kind of rationalizing what all of those mysteries are, bringing it down into the plane. I just thought that was so interesting that you just said that, because she had, and I believe she was across of the 4 ways. I don't remember what line it was in, but she had literally just said something she was not a reflector though, but it was just thinking about that gate 24. What are your thoughts on that, Danny? Have you ever heard that before?
Well, not quite necessarily that particular way, but I do know that when we were talking about gate 24 in your body graph, how it returns and that mental return, I know that for some people it can seem like a burden at times because it won't stop returning. And I know that when we were going over it, you had a few moments where it was like, oh, more data. And I guess, was there a point in time when we were reading that you started to really recognize this is mechanized data? I can understand this almost in a textbook fashion. These are mechanics. These are things that are operating, and therefore other things aren't operating. But this is operating. And this return, has it ever become, mostly it's mystical. That's what I've always found about the return. Mostly it's mystical when people let it. And if they don't let it, then it tortures them, returning to things they can't know. So,
Yes.
have you had any moments of just that torturous return to things you can't know, or has it been mostly just the return, that returning to the mental construct and then working through the knowing?
Yes. And I'll share something that I've come to understand that has really helped me as a reflector, or a story that really allowed me to settle into that return. That's so interesting that you say that. On the opposite end was the understanding the mysteries, because that is so me. I just desire to understand. And I remember I've homeschooled my kids, and this is the first year that they all chose to go into public school. So I've homeschooled my kids for the last 8 years. And I remember one specific time when I was homeschooling, and, just this burning desire of knowing and understanding, and has always been running in the back, just taking energy. And I was reading a certain, it was a history lesson, and I saw the word history. And this is just how things show up for me as a reflector. It comes in images for myself. So the word history just kind of, I was reading it on paper and it just floated up, and the word history broke apart, and so it was his story. I'm like, oh, history, his story, and I'm like, oh, that was so cool. And then I was thinking about mysteries and all of this because it was raining, whatever. This is my higher self, like showing me, and, to have some resolve. in what I'm asking. And the word mystery came up and broke apart, and it just said my story. And what was spoken to me is, the mysteries are really my story. And when you start to create them and start to see them from the end, from the beginning and forward, then there aren't any mysteries for you. And so I got really just settled into, so the return on that wasn't any, what was the not self that you had said of like just
torturous.
Thinking about too many things and right and concerning yourself with the certainty you don't have, which is not concern. You don't care. You just are running it, right?
Yeah. So that completely subsided. And then I had this beautiful tool of, okay, if there's something that's not knowing, I'm just going to begin to create my own story of what that looks like. Turn on my headlights and shine, and see the image that I choose to reflect and amplify, which I know for myself and with other mentors that I've been involved in, conscious language, reading body language, it's best to see through my creator's eyes the highest potential and people's God self, if you will, or their highest self possible. And so that's been super helpful for me, of like not having to keep returning to certain things. I'm just like, oh, if my mind keeps wanting to circle back and go there, it means that I haven't been clear yet, and I require to create something for myself.
Without the pessimism.
Correct.
That's amazing. This is amazing. I love the sound of that.
It's as if your parents unknowingly raised you in your design, right? How about songs? Do you get songs stuck in your head?
I write songs. So you can see I've got the 5 gates. That's the most is in my throat chakra. And so I went to school for vocal pedagogy. And so I use my communication device for all of that. I love songs. Yes, anything, music, sound, bioacoustics, all of that stuff, the energy of sound, and it's just what I love.
I just think about the return, and then I think about, it's funny, and you just have that same song, and it's just returning back in your head, and it's just back over and over,
until it wears down. Sooner over time, then you swap out, and a new song comes in. Usually,
when The Greatest Showman was really big, and it still is because it was a great show. But my little guy, he was like 2 years old, and he would sing the song Never Enough, and he would just blast it out. And I became conscious. I'm like, what is this actually saying to his inner self? Never enough, never. And so as that was getting stuck in my head, I had to gently, consciously change the language of I am enough. And so he started going through the house saying, I am enough. It's just so funny about how it all shows up like that.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because growing up on the incarnate as a 2-4 profile, sort of not obtuse to much of the world, on the cross of the vessel, I remember hearing all the songs I liked, and it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really re-listened to the lyrics, and I realized I naturally inserted the lyrics I wanted. I would listen back to these songs, a David Bowie song or a Beatles, not so much the Beatles songs, they were easy to understand, but certain other ones, and I would realize, wait a second, they're saying exactly the opposite of what I was always putting inside of the song. They're all heartbroken. Oh my God, they're talking about how life is a drag. Wait a second, that's not yes. Oh my God, they're talking about how they're broken up and they're sad, and that's not what I got out of it. That's not what I ever. So all my life growing up, I had already inserted the words. It's like something about that gate 24 that is mystical in its nature, and you've been speaking to it. It's acoustic. So the visual gate in your body graph, that gate 11 wants everyone to see the picture, and yourself included. It's the picture that is wanting to be transmitted. But that 24 is noise waiting to be translated into some new expression. It's actually sound. It's a sound that just comes right down the center of your body, and and it's a consistent noise. It's almost like it could be like a white noise if you really tune in on it, so we're able to measure it. But to you, it's this thinking process that wants to keep returning. The mystical thing about the 4 ways is that it marks the end of each quarter. Now, you don't need to remember any of this, but on the wheel, we would have went around the wheel because I showed you how to spot the gates, the sympathetic gates on the other side of the gates that you have in your body graph. That wheel, the first quarter of that wheel is called initiation, and gate 24 is the end of that. And the reason it's called the cross of the 4 ways is because the last hexagram of each quarter, Jen and Tressa, mark the way of that quarter. So initiation is marked with the mystical way of needing to return. So when we look back at all of the gates inside of that quarter, we see return to the emotions, return to the love of all things, return to the family, return to the mystical way, return to the very first, the principles in the first place, return to the remembrance, return to the remembrance of it all. And so it carries a great deal of I would just call it mystical quality. It has us returning without necessarily knowing why. What a benefit to humanity. Imagine if we never returned. We'd just skip on by. We'd miss everything without gate 24. We'd miss it all. We'd have basically 1 or 2 shots at a thing, and the desire stream would really carry the day on everything. But the return is the way of this first quarter of initiation, and it allows us to return to all the aspects of it. It's rather amazing. So yeah, returning and coming to meet.
I love that.
It's rather amazing. Are there any ways that you can see that that this helps incorporate things in your life? This knowledge of your type and your strategy and how you are an outer authority and how the moon, helps your inner authority. Is there any ways in which you've recognized, hey, this applies, I'm going to apply this? Is there anything that you can speak to on that? Maybe not. So
yes, the word understanding comes to me, and breaking even the word understanding apart, when I understand, that means I can stand under me. And so there's just more foundation, gives me more sovereignty for choices and permission to just continue being fully present and in my own flow. I'm not meant to be like anybody else, whereas we're conditioned in our world that's we're all put into a certain box. And that's what my return actually is. I feel really drawn to just making this very kind of not political, but it's very, that intensity post of, you guys are sovereign. We are all sovereign. We get to have our choices. You don't have to comply. You get to say yes to what your highest choice is. And I just find that return constantly. And whether it's the 3 or the 6, the martyr, I have had a lot of those experiences because of my desire to go against the mainstream thinking. And it's funny.
It's a desire to try. Yeah, you can't help but to want to try this and then try that, and in doing so, the third lines become so wise. There's no mutation on the planet without third lines bumping into it. So we bump into the next thing.
I have to share that I was on a podcast 3 days ago with a 5-1 reflector, and I had never heard that before in my life. And in that moment, she said understanding, standing under. She broke it apart. I am sitting here in deja vu.
Trisha broke that apart for you too? That's amazing.
Yes. And it's like, I'm like, are you all reflectors are just like I'm telling you, guys are deeply psychic and in tune with each other, which is something that I'm just like, what? This is so crazy and so cool. And as you're explaining that, I'm thinking about how the moon constantly returns back. there's this aspect within you and this aspect of the moon that it's constantly returning. And I have a question for you about the moon, because I've heard this from a couple of other reflectors, and I'd love to hear your personal experience. You know how when there's a full moon and everybody's kind of crazy and wacko? I've heard reflectors say, it doesn't affect me at all. This is home to me, right? Like the full moon. And, you know, how's your experience?
Yes. Yeah, what is up with that full moon? What is it? Yes.
Yes. And maybe it's part of my training that I do feel that the moon affects me. The moon, as it gets more and more full, it's just like the tide. And maybe I allow it, just an allowance. I choose to know what it means. As the moon gets more and more full with the tide, it creates, the alignment, which has an effect on our water, on the whether it's coming in or out. There's a difference there, and so in our body signals, water is a representation of our feeling world. So when the full moon comes online, it's drawing this. It's becoming more full. Our feelings are coming to a fullness, and it's just pooling. So what I noticed in myself, especially just a few days ago, conversations that were unresolved of the past began to have me looking to the past. Again, it's in my gates. I heard you just talk about it. I choose to know which one that is for me, but I'm making the connections as I'm speaking it out loud right now. All these past unresolved charges of feeling. Someone might call it a trauma or encoded memories that haven't yet been resolved. Those conversations were coming up for me, heightened, and I noticed them. And so I personally just go in and I resolve it. Like, what are the missing frequencies? I like to use color. And then I see an image what the resolve looks like. It'll look different for every single person based on, what our brain will accept. And each person that I went in with that was completely different. And the feeling that the moon was drawing out from me, when I resolve it, it's completely gone. I sink back into just complete peace. And so that's how it works for me and what I've noticed. I'm not immune to what the moon is doing to my body.
Mm-hmm. I have a question on that, because you hit on exactly what this moon's energy was supposed to be doing. Are you in tune with the astrological signs and what that energy is representing?
So Leo and fire, is that kind of what you're...
Well, no, it was I want to say it was Aquarius full moon that we just passed, and it was a super moon, so things would have been more magnified.
But we are in Leo right now.
Right, we are in Leo energy, but the moon is during a full moon or a new moon, it is in an astrological sign. So the reason I'm asking is because I actually do a whole year workshop with working with the moon's energy and what sign it's in. And in full moons, you clear. So full moons, shed light on what needs to be worked on, where new moons are for manifesting.
Yes.
So what you just described, and that's what birthed my whole workshop, was that I started to notice myself being in tune with the moon and the astrological signs. So that's why I started doing the 28-day cycle myself, because I was in tune with the energies. But you seem to naturally be doing that, and the whatever you need to work on is happening in your life to give you that opportunity to clear, work on, or keep coming back up.
Yes.
If anyone's going to naturally be themselves, it's someone with a 3 profile. If with the right serendipity, they're going to bump into all the things they're not. So they'll ultimately bump into who they are. It's really an amazing profile.
Yeah, yeah. And I just wanted to chime in real quick, just once again, and reiterate that you are doing self-hypnosis all of the time. That is when you go in and you're in communication with your unconscious mind. It has a symbol for, and I'm saying you, I'm sure you know this, but for whoever else is listening out there, your unconscious mind has a symbol for every person, every trauma, every emotion in your unconscious mind. It has a symbol, a color, an image. And when you allow the unconscious mind to resolve itself in an unconscious state, through an altered state of consciousness, meaning relaxation, meditation, those are all forms of trance. Your unconscious mind will show to you, as you just explained to us, Kristen, the colors, the shapes, whatever transformation needs to happen in that space for you to have resolution and healing at an unconscious level. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for your parents for teaching you to continue to do that, because that's what all kids do. All children do that. Your parents simply naturally, we're all in communication. That's why kids are so imaginative. But your parents foster that inside of you, and I'm sure you do the same to your kids, and that is just amazing. It's beautiful.
I have a right angle question. Am I doing that, Tressa? When I fall into my trance when I'm playing my piano, I dig into classical pieces.
Yes.
I'm ripping along. Is that something happening with me?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, not only are you going into a trance state, but music is something that they have scientifically proven that activates both the left and the right hemisphere of your brain at the same time.
No way.
Literally using all of your brain power. It is such an incredibly powerful state of being, and you are unconscious. You are in a state of trance when you're playing music like that.
Nice.
Yeah. Have you heard him play, Kristen? I know. I'm sure that you have, Jen. He's incredible. Danny is a high level pianist.
It's my love when I'm not doing this. I normally am sitting there, and plus it keeps me isolated from everyone else, and I don't mind that either. Go in my hermit cave. I'm the only second line on this. Oh no, you too, Tressa. That's right. Yep. So, it's amazing how all of our profiles and our types are really supposed to commune on this planet, and we are starting to amplify what it is and amplify and what it is to have left the old seven-centered way that stopped at cooperation and move into our new. It's like a level up, a spiral genetic level up. We're required to commune. We have differences. We see things differently, yet we're still required to commune, and to really become healthy, we will all commune, and that's what we're demonstrating here. This is amazing. This is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Any final
Jen, one thing I did want to respond to what you were sharing about the 28-day cycle. I choose to know if it's because I'm becoming more aware of human design, and I'm not super knowledgeable in astrology. I had just seen somebody mention it was Leo or something, but my ascendant is in Aquarius, so I wonder if that's why the charge was extra for me.
Yes, because if your rising sign is Aquarius, then that is how people are viewing you. And Aquarians, going, what you described about yourself, they're the humanitarians, they're the rule breakers, they are the chargers. I'm an Aquarius rising as well, so I felt it with me for this past new moon, because I try to be very mindful and pay attention to what's going through my body and what my body is telling me. I was very productive as far as things, and it was more of a what has not been working in my life, why it has not been working, and I could pinpoint it. So it was extra magnified for me.
Yeah.
And that's why, the whole, because I was actually putting it together. I'm incorporating human design into it. I had been doing the workshop. This is like my 4th year actually doing it with myself. The human design aspect is actually, birthing more into it, because we are influenced by the cycles of the moon, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. if you start to pay attention one way, shape, or form, it's influencing you on some level. And most likely, if you pull up the sign or the astrological sign and you look at what that sign represents, then you'll be like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense why that's coming up. So
peace, love, and light, guys. If we look at all the light that the moon and the sun shines upon us, I mean, the moon puts a lot of light on the earth, especially when it's full. These two celestial bodies, really, they compete with each other for the conditioning and the formatting of the planet more so than everything else, because the moon is what creates the lunar being, and the lunar being, without them, the humanity falls off kilter. We'll, like I said, we'll sail right past everything. We'll never know. And so, and then the sun basically charges and puts this energy into all the solar beings, and it becomes this perfect symmetry. It's like a touch of music, if you really want to think about it. It's all the right accents in the orchestra. And this is really wonderful. I'm so glad you're able to share all of this with us, Kristen. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? Do we have enough time for one more question?
Yeah.
I am really curious, as you step into human design and you start to understand that we need you. We need your feedback. We need your honesty. We need you to tell us how we're doing. Have you thought about using that in your day-to-day life, in your real life, where when there are aspects of somebody, what is you and what is them? And how can you reflect them back to them in a way that is helpful to them? Have you thought about any of this?
Yes. And I've thought to tread really lightly in when I understand human design, to not make it a crutch for myself of I'm reflecting you and I have nothing to do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
It's almost like a ninja type of a skill that I require developing even further on. How can this be a blessing to those around me without me letting them know too much of, or saying that this is you, this isn't me, you know, because there's so many of us who are in self-development and we see that, you know, our triggers are leading back to us. You know, when you're pointing a finger at somebody else, there's 3 pointing back to you always. And so I've had to come back to me and be like, okay, is this me, or am I like, there's a lot of stuff that I get to go sift through, because my natural like instinct is to be like, no, this is you, I'm reflecting you. But I have to be really careful of being so that it could get silly if I don't continue to look at myself too. So there is the balance of what is me and what is those around me. And that's still unfolding.
Yeah, and I absolutely understand that. And the only reason I mention that is because I am so blessed, and I apologize for my generator, baby. I am so blessed to have a few reflector friends in my life who are truly awake and truly aware. And, you know, I've had my dear friend Ixel, she said to me a couple times where everybody's lying to themselves and nobody wants to hear it from me. And she is so on point and she is so honest. And every interaction I have with her, I say, Ixel, please reflect back to me. What do you feel from me? Do you feel right? And I at this point, I care about your opinion as a reflector. I want honesty, and because I know that that's innately, naturally what you're here to do. And waking up reflectors and helping you really step into that. You are reflecting back their energies. And at the end of the day, that's such an important job that only you can do. And I need you. Do you like how I say that? Kristen, I personally need you to do that for me. So if you, but you see how, and I understand that is a whole trip, but 99% of people are not designed to do that, but you are, right?
That feels like a heavy trip. Is that a heavy trip, Kristen? Or is that medium or I don't know?
Yes, when you understand, and I love, Tressa, that you talked about, you asked first. And I think that's one of the great laws, ask and you shall receive. I've had to learn that I don't get to reflect back somebody if they haven't asked me first to do that, given me permission. And that's been one of the things that has really helped me to stay in alignment with who I am, is I don't have to reflect back everything to nothing to nobody unless they ask me to. And in the meantime, what my job is to reflect and see their perfection. And so I can do that. I can do that. And then when they
God
ask
made it
me,
resistant in sampling. That's why he made it resistant in sampling. If you think about it, you're able to resist that. That's actually an amazing gift.
Can I just throw out there that, and I am truly, as a humanitarian and you're a reflector, if there are moments where you recognize that a person could benefit, would you feel comfortable asking them, hey, do you mind if I reflect something back to you? Would you be okay with doing that in the future? Because I've had a few reflectors do that to me, and they surprised the hell out of me and impacted me deeply. And so,
yes. And if it comes into my space to have that thought to do that, I believe that would be completely in alignment with that would be the asking, because the thought came in.
Yeah. And then you're asking them and they're in agreement. And so there is no, like, I'm going to tell you what to do. Let me rub your nose in something. That's yucky. Nobody wants that.
Right.
Yes.
This all makes good sense. Well, I thought this went fabulously well. Does anyone have something they'd like to conclude with?
Savannah had a question real quick. I thought was good. That piggybacks right off of what we said. What wisdom does Kristen Reflector see our society in right now?
Oh my God, what a good question. But that sort of puts you on the spot, Kristen. So,
so is it the perfection that I choose to see of, my, I'll go there. I'll go with that. I see society feeling very comfortable with their feeling world coming online, and that they know how to manage their feeling world and what's coming up, and use all of the planets in alignment that is here for our benefit to transform whatever is showing up, and knowing that it's such a sovereign experience for each individual that we can stay in our own lane and do whatever's coming up for us without codependence of like, oh, I'm doing this, so everybody needs to do this. It's just very individual, very individualized, and seeing each individual as super special and different.
Love it.
And I choose not to reflect back. I just get disappointed.
I don't blame you on that one, girl. I don't even want to look at the collective sometimes. So I would not want to reflect back.
Is that Rook or is that Riker? That's Rook, right? Hi, Rook.
Yeah, he's like, he wants to play too. Right now he's learning his planets, and so he'll just walk around going, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars. I'm trying to find videos of I don't know, Kristen, maybe you know. I guess not, because you haven't been too much into astrology, but I'm trying to look for zodiac videos, zodiac songs, so that my kids can start learning there. Because they know the planets and they know the solar systems, they know the dwarf planets and stuff. But yeah, so.
Thank you, Rook. We love you, honey.
Planet song.
I hope that answered her question. What I see is each individual getting comfortable feeling again.
The feeling self.
Perfect. It's perfect response.
We need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jen, I guess I'm not sure quite who we're going to do on Sunday, just so you know, but we're still figuring that out. And I thought this went really well.
Yes, and we don't have one quite yet for Wednesday night, do we?
Right. We don't Wednesday. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, we will keep you guys in tune with that. If you didn't catch last Wednesday's show, it has been posted. We did. Who did we do? David Icke, and David Icke is actually getting some views. It was really good. So make sure you tune into that video. If you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the show. Get your session with Dan. Links down below. You can go to tinyurl.com/HDA links, LINKS. And we'll see you next week or on Wednesday. Y'all have a beautiful and blessed day, guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks so much, Kristen. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.